We tend to think of human biology like a closed loop hardware system, right? Like you get the body you're born with, the genetic cards you're dealt, and that's basically it.
Yeah, exactly. And from the moment you hit your mid-20s, the prevailing narrative is just this slow, inevitable process of hardware degradation.
Right. I mean, you can maybe do some basic maintenance, change the oil with a good diet, maybe keep the engine running with some cardio.
Sure, but the fundamental limits of the machine are supposedly just hard-coded into our DNA. It is a deeply, deeply ingrained mechanistic view of how we work.
It really is. We treat our nervous systems and our cellular biology as these like immutable structures, not as adaptable open source platforms.
And when people do actually talk about fundamentally upgrading that hardware,
Yeah.
the conversation almost immediately shifts. It moves away from science and straight into the realm of ascetic mysticism.
Oh, totally. Which usually involves someone telling you to sell all your worldly possessions, move to a remote mountain, and just survive on a handful of lentils.
Right, while meditating in absolute silence for the next 40 years.
Exactly. The assumption is always that to reach the absolute upper limits of human potential, what some might call enlightenment or radical bioenergetic optimization, you have to completely divorce yourself from modern society.
And that exact dichotomy is what we are systematically dismantling in this deep dive today.
Yes, it is.
The foundational material we're unpacking proposes a radically different framework. We are looking at a deeply detailed, highly technical protocol designed specifically to hack the human nervous system.
But the crucial distinction here, and I really want to emphasize this for you listening, is that this system was stress tested and optimized for the modern world.
Exactly. It's built for individuals navigating high-stress careers, complex relationships, and just the general friction of a 21st century existence.
So our guide for this exploration is this fascinating individual known as Osman. He's widely referred to in his community as the blind Muslim yogi.
He is a master bioenergy healer with nearly 50 years of continuous, rigorous practice, which is just a staggering amount of data to pull from.
It really is. And what makes his documentation so compelling is that he has essentially taken these highly guarded esoteric protocols and reverse engineered them. He turned them into a pragmatic biohacking manual.
And his approach requires us to look past the mystical terminology, right? We have to examine the underlying physiology.
Right, because we are not endorsing any specific spiritual worldview here. We're just impartially reporting on the biological mechanics he's outlining.
Exactly. While Osman's background is rooted in ancient traditions, the core of our analysis today is going to focus entirely on the measurable biological changes.
Like how specific extreme breathwork ratios alter carbon dioxide tolerance and cellular metabolism.
Yes, and we will look at his multi-pronged approach to sustaining massive energetic output without experiencing neurological burnout.
Plus the physiological hypotheses behind his documented claims of accelerated tissue repair and cellular rejuvenation, which are wild.
They are. But before we dissect the actual protocols, the exact breathing ratios, and the energetic surging, we really need to establish the credibility and the context of the source.
Yeah, the messenger informs the methodology. Because if you have this archetype in your head of a fragile, detached guru floating above the trivialities of daily life, Osman's reality is going to be a severe system shock.
His biography completely shatters that ascetic stereotype. I mean, the level of rigorous, systematic inquiry he applies to these practices didn't start in an ashram.
No, it started in childhood.
Right. He began his initial exploration into yoga at 7 years old. And by the time he was 10, he wasn't just casually stretching.
No, he was consuming this massive 30-volume encyclopedia on the science of yoga, which, by the way, was a birthday gift from his mother.
Which is incredible. Consider the cognitive framing of a 10-year-old diving into a 30-volume treatise on human bioenergetics.
He was hunting for the underlying mechanics, the source code, from the very beginning. And that intense analytical pursuit yielded results incredibly early.
It did. By the time he was 19, he achieved a state that classical yogic traditions refer to as a peak samadhi.
Okay, so let's unpack that for a second. What does hitting samadhi actually mean from a neurological standpoint?
Well, to contextualize samadhi neurologically, we are talking about a profound, systemic shift in brainwave states and default mode network activity.
Okay.
It is essentially the dissolution of the egoic boundary, and it's typically accompanied by an overwhelming surge of central nervous system energy.
Wow.
In almost every esoteric tradition, this state is the ultimate objective. Practitioners will literally spend lifetimes in isolated meditation, hoping to trigger this specific neurological event.
But Osman's reaction to hitting this ultimate spiritual peak as a teenager is arguably the most defining moment of his entire philosophy, because he didn't view it as a triumph at all.
No, he viewed it as a massive logistical problem.
Exactly. The sheer force of the energetic surge literally knocked him unconscious. And when he regained awareness, he was completely disoriented.
You couldn't string a coherent sentence together for over an hour.
Right. And his immediate pragmatic response wasn't, oh, I have achieved ultimate liberation. His response was, how on earth am I going to pay my university tuition if my brain is completely melted?
It's just a brilliantly grounding reaction. His father had made it clear that upon turning 18, financial independence was mandatory.
Yeah, so Osman is experiencing what is universally described as the absolute peak of human consciousness, and his primary concern is his employability and his academic scholarships.
It's amazing. He actually had open invitations to join established ashrams at that time, which would have solved all his financial problems instantly.
Right, they would have taken care of his housing, his food, everything.
Exactly. But he looked at the requirements, the mandatory celibacy, the isolation from society, the absolute renunciation of worldly ambition, and he unequivocally rejected them.
He wanted a career, he wanted to engage in romantic relationships, he wanted to play sports and just exist in the messy reality of the world.
And that specific decision forms the architectural foundation of his entire methodology. Osman recognized a fundamental flaw in the traditional model.
Which is what, exactly?
Basically, if a system of optimization requires you to abandon your family, your career, and your social utility, it is ultimately a fragile system.
Oh, that makes total sense. Like, a protocol that only works in a sterile, perfectly controlled laboratory environment is useless in the wild.
Exactly. He demanded a practice that could withstand the friction of reality. And he certainly subjected himself to a lot of that friction over his life.
He really did. He built a fiercely independent life, navigating the corporate world, running multiple businesses, and handling significant financial stress.
And then, 3 years ago, he experienced a severe biological curveball. He lost his eyesight completely.
Which is just a massive shift. The loss of a primary sensory input like vision typically forces a radical restructuring of a person's life.
It usually leads to increased dependency. Yet he maintained absolute self-sufficiency. He didn't retreat from the world at all.
Not even a little bit. He talks extensively about taking a job at a busy hotel reception desk, operating completely blind.
The spatial awareness and executive function required to execute that role without vision is staggering.
I can't even imagine.
The visual cortex has to rapidly remap to process tactile and auditory information at a vastly accelerated rate.
Right, to memorize the complex layout of a hotel, to guide guests physically to their rooms, it speaks to an incredibly robust and adaptable nervous system.
And he even managed the hotel's cash register.
Yeah, this part of the source material blew my mind. He developed a system of tactile identification, learning the minute physical differences in the sizes of various currency notes.
He organized them into specific pockets and managed the financial transactions, paying out deposits, collecting room fees with incredible precision.
So much precision that the hotel owner trusted him with thousands of dollars a day. He couldn't see a single bill, yet he operated as the financial hub of the business.
Which serves as a powerful testament to the neuroplasticity his lifelong practices had cultivated. But beyond his professional resilience, he also fully immersed himself in the cultural and social aspects of human life.
Oh yeah, he's been married 6 times. Sequentially, not concurrently, which he makes a point to clarify in his logs.
Right. And he utilized whiskey as a tool to downregulate his nervous system after particularly intense corporate days.
He also regularly spent his Friday nights at the local pub, not necessarily to consume massive amounts of alcohol, but to anchor himself in genuine social connection.
He essentially used the pub as a laboratory for human interaction, striking up conversations with absolute strangers. The pub environment is the antithesis of the silent ashram.
It really is. By actively engaging in business stress, multiple marriages, pub culture, and navigating profound physical disability, Osman was essentially pressure testing his own biological hardware.
Yeah, he was. And if you are listening to this right now on your commute or sitting at your desk, you have to ask yourself a practical question.
Right. If you were presented with a choice between an esoteric state of enlightenment that renders you incapable of normal social interaction and unemployable.
Versus a highly structured daily protocol that allows you to thrive under the pressure of a demanding job, stay present with your family, and maintain high physical energy.
The choice seems obvious. Osman is essentially a high-performance athlete who intentionally schedules a burger and a beer into his routine because the contrast makes the discipline sustainable.
Exactly. It eradicates the pervasive guilt associated with modern wellness culture. You do not have to choose between being a pristine spiritual vessel and a functional member of society.
You can be a deeply complex, multidimensional human being.
However, to sustain the high voltage required for that level of multidimensional performance,
Okay.
you cannot rely on sheer willpower. You need a highly engineered biological infrastructure.
Which transitions us perfectly to the actual mechanics of his system. You cannot just jump into advanced energetic practices.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
If you try to run industrial level voltage through a standard household wire, the wire melts.
You have to upgrade the physical hardware first. And for Osman, that foundational hardware upgrade is achieved entirely through a highly specific pranayama.
Right, a breathwork protocol he designates as the 1:4:2 ratio.
So how does that ratio actually break down in practice?
The numerical ratio of 1:4:2 dictates the physiological rhythm of the breath cycle. So for every single count of the inhalation, the breath is retained for 4 counts, followed by an exhalation lasting 2 counts.
Okay, got it.
While the ratio itself is standard in many yogic texts, Osman focuses relentlessly on a specific threshold he calls level 4.
And level 4 is where this stops being a relaxing morning meditation and becomes a grueling biological hack.
Oh, absolutely. The level 4 protocol requires a 16-count inhalation, a massive 64-count breath hold, and a 32-count exhalation.
And this single cycle must be repeated for 21 consecutive rounds. Let's just break down the math on that for a moment.
Go for it.
A single cycle is 112 counts. Even if you are moving slightly faster than 1 count per second, you are looking at well over an hour of intense, agonizingly slow respiratory control.
It's a massive commitment. But the true mechanism of action, the core biological hack, lies almost entirely in that 64-count breath retention.
Why is that specific duration so critical?
To comprehend why, we have to look at the blood chemistry involved in extended breath holding. If a person unaccustomed to this practice attempts a 64-count hold, they will likely hit a wall of severe physiological panic around count 25 or 30.
And that panic is fundamentally misunderstood by most people, isn't it?
Completely. When you feel that desperate clawing urge to breathe, it isn't because your body has run out of oxygen. You still have plenty of oxygen circulating in your blood at that point.
So what's actually triggering the panic?
The panic is triggered by the accumulation of carbon dioxide. The chemoreceptors in the brainstem detect the rising acidity from the CO2 and sound a massive alarm, forcing the diaphragm to contract.
It's the literal sensation of suffocating.
Exactly. Which means the panic is actually a false alarm. It is a highly sensitive, overly reactive software program designed to keep you safe, but it severely limits your physiological capacity.
So by subjecting yourself to a daily 64-count hold, you are utilizing the principles of hormesis.
Right, introducing a controlled stressor to force a beneficial adaptation. You are aggressively altering your baseline carbon dioxide tolerance.
You are basically retraining the brainstem to remain calm in a highly acidic, stressful chemical environment.
Precisely. And in doing so, you are leveraging the Bohr effect.
Remind us what the Bohr effect is.
As CO2 tolerance increases, the elevated levels of carbon dioxide in the blood actually decrease the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen.
Okay, meaning what for the body?
This means your red blood cells become significantly more efficient at releasing oxygen deep into the cellular tissues where it is needed most, rather than just holding onto it in the bloodstream.
Wow. And Osman is very clear that reaching this level 4 state is not a weekend project.
Not at all. He notes that for an average individual consuming a standard omnivorous diet, it takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months of daily incremental practice to achieve the 16-64-32 ratio for 21 rounds comfortably.
The systemic biological changes that occur during those 6 to 12 months must be profound.
They are. By repeatedly inducing transient hypoxia, these brief controlled windows of low oxygen, the body initiates a massive survival response.
Right.
At the cellular level, this mild hypoxic stress triggers a protein complex known as hypoxia-inducible factor 1, or HIF1.
And HIF1 acts as a master switch for cellular resilience. Right?
Exactly. It operates as a transcription factor. When oxygen levels drop during that 64-count hold, HIF-1 stabilizes and travels to the nucleus of the cell.
Okay.
It binds to the DNA and essentially commands the genome to upregulate survival mechanisms.
Mm.
It stimulates angiogenesis, which is the creation of new capillary networks.
So that's drastically improving blood flow to previously underserved tissues.
Yes. And it forces the mitochondria to become ruthlessly efficient at producing ATP, which is the energy currency of the cell.
And the clinical validation for this mechanism is becoming impossible to ignore. Osman cites a really compelling study out of the University of California regarding the physiological impacts of controlled respiratory patterns.
All right. But what makes this study fascinating is how they controlled for the placebo effect. Because obviously you can't instruct a mouse to perform a 16-64-32 breathwork routine.
No, exactly. So how did they test it?
To isolate the purely biological effects, the researchers utilized chemical mimics. They administered compounds that trick the cellular pathways into responding as if the organism were undergoing targeted breathwork and breath retention.
So the mice didn't even have to hold their breath. The chemicals just triggered the exact biochemical cascade we just discussed with HIF-1 and transient hypoxia.
Exactly. And the observed data over a 6-month period was phenomenal. The researchers documented a 15 to 30% improvement in comprehensive health markers across the board.
That's huge.
They saw dramatic reductions in the biomarkers associated with cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, and cellular mutation.
And the ultimate takeaway was a calculated increase in overall longevity of up to 30%, right?
Yes, and if we extrapolate a 30% increase to the average human lifespan of approximately 80 years, we're talking about an additional 24 years of viable biological function.
You are pushing the timeline well past a century. And not through pharmaceutical intervention, but by fundamentally restructuring how your cellular infrastructure processes oxygen and manages oxidative stress.
But the reality of implementing this is daunting. Spending a year training yourself to endure what feels like chemical suffocation for an hour every day requires immense discipline.
Oh, for sure. Someone listening right now might logically ask, why go to that extreme? Can't I just practice 5 minutes of deep diaphragmatic breathing and reap some of the benefits?
And the answer is yes. 5 minutes of deep breathing will absolutely downregulate your sympathetic nervous system and provide baseline health benefits.
But Osman's protocol is not aiming for baseline health.
No, not at all. He is building a biological architecture capable of withstanding extreme energetic loads. In his terminology, the 1-4-2 breathing clears the nadis, the energetic conduits of the body.
Translated into modern physiology, he is maximizing vagal tone, expanding alveolar capacity, and building hyperelastic, highly vascularized tissues.
It's like as if you attempt the advanced protocols, the actual energetic surging, without that 64-count infrastructure in place, the nervous system simply cannot handle the sheer volume of metabolic output.
To use Osman's exact phrasing, if you skip the foundation, you will literally blow the circuits.
Exactly. Building that massive lung capacity and CO2 tolerance creates a completely new paradigm. You have constructed a high-capacity, heavy-duty biological battery.
But a battery is useless unless you have the means to charge it.
Right. Which brings us to the core engine of his methodology. Once you have spent a year building the hardware with pranayama, it is time to engage the accelerator.
And this is the daily Kriya practice, the actual mechanism for the profound physical and energetic transformations he documents.
Kriya represents the shift from structural preparation to active, conscious manipulation of the central nervous system.
And what I love is that he strips away the esoteric mystery surrounding the technique. He provides the exact protocol.
Right, he walks you right through it.
You initiate a slow, deep inhalation, counting to roughly 20 or 25. But this isn't passive breathing.
No. As you inhale, you are forcefully visualizing and physically pulling a current of energy from the base of the spine, drawing it upward along the spinal column.
And the target destination for this energetic pull is highly specific. He instructs the practitioner to drive the energy to the crosshairs of the pineal gland.
Physiologically, this is located above the palate, below the crown of the head, centered between the ears, and positioned slightly toward the posterior of the brain.
He refers to the pineal gland as the CPU, the central processing unit of the human energetic system.
You forcefully pull that current up to the CPU over the 20-count inhalation. You hold it there momentarily, creating a sensation of intense pressure or fullness in the center of the head.
Then you initiate the release. You slowly exhale, stretching the count all the way to 100.
During this extended exhalation, you visualize that dense concentration of energy slowly cascading back down the spinal column, vertebra by vertebra.
By the time you reach the 100th count, the energy has fully settled back at the base, and you immediately begin the next 20-count upward surge.
The physiological contrast in that cycle is profound. The forceful 20-count upward pull acts as an acute sympathetic stressor, an energetic shock wave traveling up the central nervous system.
And then this is immediately followed by a 100-count, deeply parasympathetic relaxation phase.
Right. You are applying a rhythmic, oscillating pressure system directly to the cerebrospinal fluid and the vagus nerve.
But the dosage of this practice is where Osman completely diverges from historical precedent.
Oh, drastically. Paramahansa Yogananda, who is largely credited with introducing Kriya to the Western world, explicitly recommended limiting this practice to 14 to 24 rounds per day.
He warned against overstimulating the system, right?
He did. But Osman, operating with his upgraded biological hardware, pushed that limit to 50 rounds daily, which requires roughly an hour of continuous practice.
And after maintaining that 50-round protocol for 3 years, allowing his nervous system to thoroughly adapt to the voltage, he doubled the input.
He established his baseline at 100 rounds per day.
That is 2 solid hours of intense, relentless, energetic, surging up and down the spine every single day.
It's a massive time commitment.
The obvious analytical pushback here is, at what point does a 2-hour daily protocol just become a different type of prison?
Right. Hasn't he just traded the physical isolation of an ashram for a 2-hour daily confinement in his own living room?
Exactly. How is that compatible with the robust, engaged modern lifestyle he champions?
It is a valid critique. But Osman justifies the 2-hour commitment to the sheer magnitude of the biological return on investment.
Because it was precisely when he escalated to the 100-round threshold that he began documenting rapid systemic physical rejuvenation that honestly defies standard medical timelines.
Right. According to his detailed logs, the jump to 100 rounds resolved a severe chronic physical issue.
As a devout practicing Muslim, Osman performs daily prayers that require extensive kneeling. Over decades, this mechanical stress severely degraded the cartilage in his knee joints, resulting in stubborn chronic pain.
From an orthopedic perspective, articular cartilage degradation is notoriously difficult to reverse.
Because it doesn't have good blood flow, right?
Exactly. Cartilage is an avascular tissue. It lacks a dedicated blood supply. It relies entirely on the slow, inefficient process of diffusion from the surrounding synovial fluid to receive nutrients and clear cellular waste.
Okay, so when it gets damaged.
When cartilage is damaged, the body simply cannot deliver the necessary repair cells like macrophages and chondrocytes fast enough to outpace the mechanical wear and tear.
Yet, Osman documents that within 72 hours of hitting the 100-round Kriya protocol, decades of chronic mechanical cartilage pain completely evaporated.
Which is astounding.
If we look at the physiological mechanisms that could theoretically support such a radical claim, how does breathing and visualizing energy repair an avascular joint?
The prevailing hypothesis is that massive forced oscillation of the nervous system acts as a systemic cellular shock.
Okay.
The autonomic nervous system directly controls local capillary dilation and immune response. By pumping this massive voltage through the body for 2 hours, he is likely hyperstimulating the local neuroimmune pathways.
So this massive upregulation could force a localized flood of anti-inflammatory cytokines and growth factors into the synovial capsule.
Precisely. Radically accelerating a repair process that normally stalls out due to lack of blood flow.
He also documents a secondary instance of rapid regeneration involving his dental health.
Right. He notes that the energetic toll of performing bioenergy healing on critical care clients would occasionally suppress his immune system, leading to a severely loose tooth.
Now, dental stability relies on the periodontal ligaments, right?
Yes, a highly specialized network of connective tissue fibers that anchor the root of the tooth to the alveolar bone.
Once again, he states that within 2 to 3 days of sustaining the 100-round Kriya practice, the tooth completely stabilized and anchored itself firmly back into the jaw.
For periodontal ligaments to tighten and regenerate connective fibers within a 72-hour window suggests an explosive upregulation of fibroblast activity in collagen synthesis.
It implies that the baseline speed of cellular turnover in his body was shifted into a completely different gear.
But, and this is a big but, accessing that level of accelerated cellular repair usually comes with a massive list of behavioral caveats in traditional systems.
Oh, for sure. If you look at traditional texts detailing advanced Kundalini or Kriya awakenings, they present a rigid, non-negotiable user manual.
Absolute celibacy is required. Strict raw vegan diets are mandated. unquestioning obedience to a lineage guru is enforced.
And Osman takes that entire ancient rule book, acknowledges its efficiency, and then completely discards it as a requirement.
His stance on lifestyle dogma is perhaps the most radical and psychologically liberating aspect of his entire framework.
He is completely transparent about the physics of traditional restrictions, but he refuses to conflate biological efficiency with moral superiority.
Right. Let's examine his perspective on diet and celibacy. He does not deny the physiological reality that retaining sexual energy and consuming a highly specific diet accelerates the process.
He openly states that strict celibacy can increase the speed of energetic development by a factor of 15.
He even personally utilizes specialized dietary tools, like his preferred daily smoothie consisting of raw cauliflower, flaxseed, and an entire lemon, peel included.
The biological logic behind those traditional restrictions is actually really sound. Digestion is an incredibly energy-intensive process.
It is. Consuming heavy, complex proteins requires massive amounts of ATP to break down. By shifting to raw, easily assimilated foods, you eliminate metabolic drag.
Similarly, the endocrine system expends immense resources on reproductive functions.
Exactly. By practicing celibacy, you redirect that highly potent biological energy, the literal raw material of creation, upward into the central nervous system.
He acknowledges the 15 times acceleration, yet he vehemently opposes making it mandatory for his students.
Because he understands that forcing a modern individual into puritanical asceticism almost inevitably results in psychological burnout.
Right, or deep-seated resentment, or a massive behavioral rebound,
To illustrate this, he shares the case study of a female student who reached the breathless state.
which is a highly advanced, profound marker of yogic progression where the respiratory rate drops to almost zero because the cellular oxygen efficiency is so high.
And she achieved this monumental biological milestone in just 12 months. But the crucial detail is how she lived during those 12 months.
She didn't retreat to a convent. She maintained her professional career. She walked her dogs.
She socialized and enjoyed drinks with her friends. And most importantly, during that exact 12-month period, she met her soulmate and engaged in a deeply fulfilling, active romantic relationship.
Her trajectory proves that the system is robust enough to withstand the friction of a modern lifestyle.
It demonstrates that psychological freedom and genuine human connection can actually serve as a catalyst for energetic development, rather than a hindrance.
Osman actively biohacks his own system to bypass these restrictions, too. He discusses the inevitable decline of testosterone as men age.
Instead of viewing this as an unavoidable decay or immediately seeking synthetic hormone replacement therapy, he approaches it as an engineering problem.
Right. He began consuming raw egg yolks mixed with ayran, a traditional Turkish fermented yogurt drink.
He utilized the highly bioavailable cholesterol from the yolks, aided by the probiotic environment of the Iran, to naturally synthesize and massively boost his testosterone levels.
He is operating as a pragmatist, not a Puritan.
By decoupling the biological mechanics from the moral dogma, he treats human optimization like an open-source software project.
He provides the base code, the 142 breath, and the Kriya protocol. He then trusts you to download that code and calibrate it to your specific hardware and lifestyle parameters.
Which leads directly into his most controversial stance regarding spiritual sovereignty.
In many traditional yogic lineages, attempting advanced Kriya without receiving Diksha, a formal, ritualistic initiation from a recognized guru, is considered dangerous or even impossible.
Osman pushes back against this concept with a warning that borders on the esoteric. He essentially frames Diksha as an eternal spiritual contract.
He argues that when you submit to formal initiation by a guru, you are permanently tethering your energetic architecture to their specific lineage.
He uses incredibly stark language here, stating that you are essentially signing away your soul's autonomy.
Operating from the belief that consciousness survives biological death, he warns that if you are bound to a guru's order, you forfeit your freedom to navigate the multidimensional reality of the afterlife on your own terms.
You become, in his words, an eternal subordinate to that lineage.
Another one interprets that warning literally or metaphorically. The psychological implication is profound. Outsourcing your ultimate authority, whether physical or spiritual, to a singular leader breeds dependency.
It completely subverts critical thinking. Osman advocates entirely for self-Diksha.
He asserts that the moment you apply the 142 breathing, push the current up your spine, and feel that initial, undeniable surge of internal voltage that is your initiation.
The mechanics of the universe initiate you. You retain absolute executive control over your own development.
But this raises a challenging question. If we know that celibacy and extreme dietary restriction can accelerate the process by 15 times, aren't we actively handicapping ourselves by going out for a burger, having a beer, and engaging in normal relationships?
Are we just settling for a mediocre, watered-down version of optimization because we lack discipline?
Exactly.
That perspective fundamentally misunderstands the purpose of the practice, according to Osman.
Hmm.
We incarnated into highly complex physical avatars to experience a multidimensional existence.
We are here to process tactile sensation, to navigate the complexities of love, to experience the friction of society, and to taste the world.
If you fast forward to the end of the simulation by isolating yourself in a sensory deprivation cave, you haven't won the game. You simply refuse to play it.
The objective is to generate a massive surplus of internal energy so that you can experience the human condition at the highest possible resolution without being destroyed by the stress of it.
But to survive playing the game at that high resolution, especially while running 100 rounds of Kriya a day, requires rigorous structural maintenance.
Yeah, if you run a commercial kitchen at maximum capacity but you fire the entire cleaning staff, the metabolic waste, the grease, the smoke, the garbage will accumulate until the entire restaurant catches fire. You need a system to manage the exhaust.
Precisely. Kriya is the engine block. It generates massive torque. But without a supporting ecosystem, that torque will rip the chassis apart.
Osman is acutely aware of the historical precedents here. He points out that monumental figures in the yogic tradition, such as Swami Vivekananda, achieved massive energetic awakenings but suffered catastrophic biological failures, dying at just 39 years old.
Paramahansa Yogananda himself passed away at 59.
The implication being that they escalated their internal voltage far faster than their physical biology could adapt. They essentially vibrated their own hardware to pieces.
To prevent this, Osman insists on a rigorous, multi-pronged approach to physical maintenance.
The first pillar of this maintenance is hatha yoga, utilized specifically to maintain the elasticity of the physical pathways. But more surprisingly, he insists on rigorous strength and endurance training.
This completely upends the visual of the frail, passive yogi. He argues that you have to lift heavy weights and build actual muscle mass.
Muscle tissue acts as a metabolic sink. It provides the physical density required to ground and house high-voltage energy without overwhelming the nervous system.
And then we come to the most critical and often most neglected pillar of recovery: sleep hygiene.
Osman is admirably candid about his own catastrophic failures in this area. While attempting to build his YouTube channel and author his book simultaneously with his practice, he severely restricted his sleep.
Right, operating on just 3 hours a night for extended periods.
And it caused a systemic breakdown. He references modern neurobiological consensus, specifically citing data discussed by Dr. Andrew Huberman, to establish that 6 hours of sleep is the absolute, non-negotiable biological red line.
When you are overclocking your brain with advanced Kriya, your neurons are firing at an unprecedented rate, generating massive amounts of metabolic byproducts, including amyloid beta proteins.
And during deep, slow-wave sleep, the brain activates the glymphatic system.
The glial cells physically shrink, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to wash through the brain tissue and clear out this neurotoxic waste.
If you restrict your sleep to 3 hours while running 100 rounds of Kriya, you are keeping the engine redline while actively preventing the glymphatic system from flushing the exhaust.
It is a guaranteed recipe for neurodegeneration. You require 7 to 9 hours for the body to consolidate the energetic gains and execute cellular repair.
Osman also integrates a highly specific protocol regarding sound vibration, utilizing tantric mantras. But he strips away the religious connotations and approaches it through the lens of cymatics.
Cymatics being the study of visible sound, demonstrating how specific acoustic frequencies can organize particulate matter and fluids into highly complex geometric patterns.
Considering the human body is predominantly water, the implications are massive.
He utilizes precise acoustic frequencies to target localized nerve plexuses, or chakras. He approaches it like an engineer tuning a localized biological receiver.
Right. If he needs to upregulate his creative capacity, he directs specific frequencies at the sacral plexus.
If he is facing a demanding business negotiation, he targets the solar plexus to stimulate adrenal and dopaminergic drive.
According to his logs, integrating these targeted acoustic resonances accelerated his overall energetic development by a factor of 15 over a 90-day period.
It acts as a localized acoustic catalyst for the nervous system.
The final pillar of his supporting ecosystem is meditation, which he again defines through strict neurological parameters rather than vague spiritual feelings.
His goal in meditation is to consciously access the delta brainwave state.
Delta waves are the slowest, highest amplitude brainwaves, oscillating between zero point 0.5 and 4 hertz. They are almost exclusively associated with the deepest stages of dreamless sleep and profound physical healing.
Osman asserts that by consciously shifting the brain into a delta state while awake, you alter the receptive capacity of the nervous system.
While Kriya generates power internally from the base of the spine, accessing the delta state acts as a receiver for ambient external energy.
It serves as an incredibly rapid systemic battery recharge, pulling the nervous system entirely out of the sympathetic drive and into a state of profound biological restoration.
It forces a brutal self-assessment of our own routines. Are we driving the system hard with stimulants and stress, but completely ignoring the glymphatic clearance required during deep sleep?
Are we meditating endlessly but neglecting the physical muscle mass required to ground our energy?
Osman's framework demands a balanced ecosystem: muscular density, acoustic hormonal tuning, rigorous cardiovascular capacity, and profound neurological reset.
Which brings us to the ultimate question of application. If we successfully integrate the 1-4-2 breathing, endure the 100 rounds of Kriya, and balance the ecosystem perfectly, what is the theoretical endpoint?
What are we engineering this biology for?
The answer lies in Osman's core philosophical rebellion. He entirely rejects the pervasive New Age concept that the physical body is merely a temporary disposable meat suit, and that our true nature is purely ethereal.
He insists unequivocally that you are your body.
He views the physical avatar and the consciousness as an integrated, multidimensional construct. To illustrate the limitations of pure consciousness, he cites the experiences of Sri M.
Sri M being a prominent figure who documented extensive out-of-body states.
Right. Sri M reported that when his consciousness fully separated from his physical form, his sensory perception remained intact. He could visually perceive the room, he could hear conversations perfectly, and he could even process olfactory data. He could smell the environment.
But he entirely lacked physical agency. If he attempted to interact with matter, to pick up an object, or to embrace a person, his form simply passed through them without resistance.
Osman uses this to highlight a profound truth. If you believe the physical body is an irrelevant trap to be escaped, what happens when you want to physically hold your child?
What happens when you want to feel the texture of the world? As pure consciousness, you are an impotent observer.
You require the physical density of the body to experience the tactile friction and beauty of this dimension. The objective is not to discard the vehicle, the objective is to master it.
And that mastery leads to the most provocative, highly contested concept in his entire transcript: the theoretical pursuit of the deathless body.
This is where we cross from optimized wellness into what sounds like science fiction. But Osman grounds this concept by referencing historical anomalies.
He points to figures like Mahavatar Babaji, an entity in Himalayan lore reported to maintain an immortal, unaging physical form across centuries.
He cites Valalar, a 19th century mystic whose purported achievement of a deathless state was rigorous enough to be the subject of a massive 800-page academic thesis by scholar Tulsi Ram.
While those historical accounts will trigger immediate skepticism, Osman approaches the concept through the cold logic of cellular mathematics. He establishes a baseline metric. Standard human aging progresses at a rate of 1 day per day.
Every 24 hours, your telomeres shorten, and your cells accumulate a specific amount of epigenetic damage.
But we've already established, via the University of California data, that the 1-4-2 pranayama protocol can increase longevity by 30%.
You are fundamentally slowing the rate of cellular decay. You are no longer aging at 1 day per day. You have reduced the velocity to 0.7 days per day.
You've applied the brakes. Now, introduce the Kriya protocol. The massive rhythmic surging of the nervous system acts as an exponential accelerator for cellular repair.
It forces the regeneration of a vascular tissue like cartilage and upregulates fibroblast activity in the jaw. If breathwork alone slows aging by 30%, Osman's hypothesis is that running 100 rounds of Kriya might slow it by 60, 80, or 90%.
The mathematical target, the elusive deathless state, is simply reaching the biological break-even point. It is the moment where the rate of cellular regeneration perfectly matches the rate of cellular decay.
You hit 0 days per day. And theoretically, if you can generate sufficient energetic surplus, you cross that threshold. You begin to experience actual cellular age reversal.
This is the exact point where ancient esoteric theory and cutting-edge modern science violently collide. Osman explicitly connects his energetic practices to the Nobel Prize-winning research of Dr. Shinya Yamanaka.
The discovery of the Yamanaka factors completely rewrote our understanding of biological time. Yamanaka identified 4 specific transcription factors, proteins, that control the rate of transcription of genetic information, from DNA to messenger RNA.
By introducing these 4 specific factors into a fully mature, specialized adult cell like a skin cell, Yamanaka proved that you can essentially strip away the accumulated epigenetic markers.
You force the cell to forget its age and its specialization, reverting it all the way back to a pluripotent stem cell state.
They proved that the biological clock is not a one-way street. They demonstrated cellular age reversal in mice, taking aged, failing tissues and reprogramming them back to a state of youth.
The mechanism for reversing aging is currently sitting dormant in our DNA.
The current focus of modern longevity science is finding a safe pharmaceutical method to trigger these Yamanaka factors in living humans without accidentally causing unregulated cell growth or tumors.
Osman's hypothesis is profoundly elegant. He suggests that ancient civilizations already discovered the trigger.
But instead of using synthetic chemical compounds, they used extreme bioenergetic pressure, transient hypoxia, and targeted acoustic resonance to endogenously stimulate that epigenetic reprogramming.
He theorizes that this mastery of human biology was an established science in antiquity. When he looks at the architectural impossibility of the pyramids, or the laser precision of the Kailasa temple carved straight down into solid bedrock in India, he doesn't see the work of primitive societies.
He hypothesizes a civilization possessing a profound, integrated mastery of both physics and human biology, a science that was largely eradicated by a historical cataclysm, leaving behind only fragmented, highly guarded rituals.
Practitioners like Osman are essentially operating as biological archaeologists. They are utilizing their own nervous systems as laboratories, painstakingly attempting to reverse engineer this lost science.
Through trial and error, adjusting breath ratios and energetic visualizations, they are trying to reconstruct the exact physiological sequence required to unlock the genome and achieve the break-even point of aging.
It is a staggering reframing of human potential. We are not a closed-loop system destined for inevitable decay.
We are infinitely adaptable, open-source biological platforms capable of utilizing extreme internal pressure to theoretically pause or even reverse our own biological clocks.
It demands an extraordinary level of discipline, a tolerance for intense physical and psychological stress, and a willingness to completely discard societal norms.
But the underlying physiological trajectory from CO2 tolerance to angiogenesis, from neuroimmune stimulation to epigenetic reprogramming, is logically sound and increasingly supported by clinical data.
We have covered massive ground today. We started by examining a man who refused to let blindness or a demanding career stop him from mapping the absolute limits of his biology.
We unpack the grueling reality of the 16-64-32 breathwork cycle, fundamentally rewiring the brainstem's response to carbon dioxide.
We explored the mechanics of the 100-round Kriya protocol, utilizing the central nervous system to forcefully pump repair factors into avascular joints and connective tissues.
We analyzed his total rejection of ascetic dogma, proving that you do not have to abandon society, relationships, or even pub culture to achieve profound energetic optimization.
We detailed the absolute necessity of the supporting ecosystem, the structural density of strength training, the acoustic targeting of somatics, and the non-negotiable 6-hour red line for glymphatic clearance during sleep.
And we arrived at the ultimate theoretical destination, the mathematical pursuit of the break-even point of aging, driven by the realization that mastering the physical body is the only way to fully participate in the multidimensional reality of this universe.
If you are evaluating your own routines right now, the most pressing question is where you choose to apply this information.
Are you relieved to know that extreme wellness doesn't require ascetic isolation? Are you recognizing that your current routine lacks the foundational breaks of adequate sleep and physical density?
Or are you perhaps considering testing the limits of your own CO2 tolerance with the 1-4-2 breathing protocol?
It provides a completely new lens through which to view our daily habits. But I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought to process.
Osman's premise is that we are manually attempting to rediscover a lost, ancient biological science through slow, generational trial and error.
But consider the technological inflection point we are living through right now. We have artificial intelligence systems like AlphaFold that have successfully mapped the entire universe of protein structures.
We are utilizing quantum computing to model cellular biology at the atomic level. We're building the capacity to simulate complex biological systems entirely in silico.
Precisely. So what happens when we inevitably feed all of this esoteric bioenergetic data into those advanced AI models?
What happens when a machine intelligence finally maps the exact granular epigenetic impact of a 64-second breath hold, or the precise biochemical cascade triggered by a 20-count Kundalini surge to the pineal gland?
Will our technology finally validate the ancient mystics? And if it does, will achieving a state of enlightenment or cellular age reversal transition from a lifelong, grueling spiritual pursuit into a standard, meticulously prescribed medical protocol available at your local clinic?
That is the point where human evolution becomes a conscious, engineered choice.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take a deep 20-count breath, pull it up to the crosshairs, and perhaps begin your own experiment. We'll see you next time.